It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another Real Estate Breakfast episode as we navigate together through the 2025 year, talking all things property. We talk to the experts, of course, commentators right around the country for their analysis and predictions. And you can stream us, as always, anytime on multiple platforms. And if you'd like to send us an email, you can do that as well. Just let us know how the property journey is going for you. What maybe is a question or two that you might have, so fire those through. Our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Hope your weekend is going well. It is a Sunday morning, March the 30th, and last night, oh man, if you want something to watch, last night I was watching a Netflix doco called Con Mum. It is outrageous what happened to a couple who were happily in love, going about their own business, minding their own business when everything gets hijacked. And I didn't know where this was going or what was going to happen next. Money does funny things to people, we know that. So check this out for some disturbing behaviour for what happens to people when money enters the equation of life. Now, it's been another busy working week as always. We spoke on Monday to Laura in Brisbane. On Tuesday, we were in Perth talking with Nikki. On Wednesday, we were talking to Samantha in Canberra, and we also caught up with Angelo in Sydney. So the best of the week, that is coming next.
Grab your weekly dose of inspiration to help build a real estate portfolio. We talk to the best in the business every day. Learn from the professionals and know your property with us.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something people in Southeast Queensland have experienced before. I won't be the first, I won't be the last. I mean, in 2011, 20,000 homes flooded in Brisbane. A lot of those homes are still being lived in. A lot of those homes would have been bought and sold since then. So people live in flood areas in Southeast Queensland and in Brisbane. But what I've spent a lot of time thinking about in the last few weeks is, how do you reassure buyers? How do you get them over the line to even come and look at your property in a flood area? Because there is obviously online mapping available which shows you what parts of the city are at a flood risk. And my house is in a medium flood risk, but my house never flooded. We didn't get flooding in 2011 and 2022 or during Alfred because my house is just on a slight rise. But on the flood maps, it doesn't show that. So it's really hard. How do you get past a person's initial clicking on a real estate ad and looking at a flood maps to then take the next step and investigate for themselves at an open home, without being able to tell them that full story. And so it's something we're dealing with. And I think Cyclone Alfred will really put weather events and disasters sort of back in the forefront of people's minds. And that's probably not ideal for someone who's trying to sell right now like me.
What about the real estate company that you've engaged in to sell your property? How are they sort of tackling that whole question in terms of selling your property with regard to that map? Because it's not affecting you, and sometimes that can feel a little bit unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been great and they know how to approach this. If someone makes a phone call, they know what to say because our house didn't flood. So a simple phone call can clear that up. And when people come to the open home, it is one of the questions they ask, how much water was on this property in those weather events. They also recommended that we take photos during Cyclone Alfred. So we could say, if there was any water on the street or in the suburb, or how close did it get? And the water didn't get anywhere near Jindalee in this most recent event. Lots of other suburbs were sadly affected, but based on the way that the rain falls and the flash flooding, it doesn't always affect the same areas. So we did take photos, but there was nothing to show. But at least we could have put buyers at ease by saying this is what happened at the height of the disaster. You can see, where the water level is. So that was one of the things they recommended. And I guess it's just about engaging with people and making them aware and telling people that looking at the flood maps is important, but it's not the whole story. It doesn't give you all of the facts. And so it is worth investigating. If you're looking in an area that's affordable, and certainly in the area that I'm in is an up and coming area, there's lots of amenity here. It's got a lot going for it. If you're looking in the area, don't be completely turned off by looking at a house that may or may not have flooded without doing your own research yourself.
I was going to ask you about the outside barbecue area, the dining, al fresco, etc. What sort of a setup have you got?
Queenslanders love a barbecue, Craig. That certainly features in our backyard. We've got a nice patio and we've got a nice backyard for the kids to run around and some nice gardens as well to enjoy the Queensland autumn weather right now.
The reason I ask is because you work in the media. With these media barbecue parties, everybody's out trying to do one another. So competition is there for fantastic outdoor dining and sort of like, look what I've got, maybe better than yours.
Yes, you've definitely got that right. I love our outdoor area too. It's definitely built for entertaining. And I'll actually be really sad to say goodbye to the house. It's been a lovely house for us for the last 10 years, but we just need a little bit more space. So I'm hoping someone falls in love with it the way I did.
Don't navigate the real estate market alone. Let us help guide you in the world of real estate every day. Make better informed decisions with the latest news and insights.
I think that is quite sort of significant. I don't think your average person realises just that sort of net effect of what's happening with those buyers agents.
Absolutely. And I found it especially a couple of years ago where there was a particular investor gurus where they would specifically say where to go to, and they had a large following. And as soon as 5,500 investors are seeing where to invest, of course, they all jump on the same ship. And if they go elsewhere, then this definitely has a lot of impact on the buyer activity in the markets or moving away from the markets where we see then a steady pricing correction.
Yes, and, from somebody that is working in the real estate industry, investor gurus, as you just mentioned, they can be a bit of a nightmare because they can undo some of the positive sentiment. And as you say, with large followings and people just following packs, that can dictate just how well a year can progress.
Absolutely. And what you might find is as well, where article has mentioned as well, where if investors see that everyone has moved away, they've made growth, they might decide to sell and take their capital and reinvest elsewhere, where we might see some more stock coming to market purely because they're reinvesting elsewhere.
I wonder what it takes to be one of these investor gurus. Have you got any idea? Because there will be some people listening, Nikki, thinking, how can I become an investor guru? What sort of qualifications do you need?
Look, I'm sure they have qualifications and they have a large following social media where they share a lot of information. Sometimes, of course, we find that buyers agents become like online investor gurus and really explaining where to go and selling courses where to purchase, which could, in my opinion, really affect some strong investor groups going to certain areas and dominating those markets and seeing prices increase.
It's very interesting to be talking about that this morning. Now, Rockingham, multiple suburbs in Rockingham. This is an area that you are in. Tell us a little bit about how this has been going, particularly over the last couple of years for our first-time home buyers.
So the city of Rockingham has multiple suburbs within the city of Rockingham where we find the coastal suburbs have always been really sought after by the owner-occupiers. We find suburbs like the Coolongup, Hillman, they were less desirable for the owner-occupiers, and we found that a lot of investors over the last couple of years, they found that the prices were very undervalued for being so close to the ocean, so close to the city, and good rental returns. So they were actually snapping up the properties where we would launch a property and within a day we could have anywhere between 10 to 30 offers on a property because it was, in their opinion, very low valued, whereas the owner occupiers weren't too interested to live in those suburbs.
Domain's latest report debunks the myth, showing that while political uncertainty can dampen confidence, elections don't directly slow property transactions. Is that a fair comment from your end?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, Craig. I think general consensus in the marketplace around election time is that a hold or a change in government won't necessarily affect the conditions immediately. So if you're currently on the market or thinking about coming to the market, you've got pretty clear optics on the conditions. And I think if there is going to be any change around that, it would be very short-lived. We generally see markets stabilise 3 to 6 months post-election. There's a variety of external and economic impacts that can obviously shift as well.
And Canberra's housing market is particularly sensitive to elections due to its high number of public servants. And with job uncertainty, that causes temporary slowdowns as seen in falling auction clearance rates around this time with an election. It is a time, I guess, for people to fear that possibly their jobs may sort of shift and move into other areas.
Absolutely. The ACT actually has, on average, 30% higher public service employees in the total workforce. So ACT currently has 42% of its total workforce within the public service area in comparison to, say, New South Wales or Victoria, which sits on average around 10%. I definitely do think that the clearance rates have been somewhat affected. So they are currently down about 10% to the mid-40s in comparison to the same time last year, showing that we are still battling other economic drivers putting pressure on confidence, though any positive change in government usually isn't transferred to the market seen until months following.
And just in terms of your market there for 2025, I mean, how's it all going for you in Canberra?
Yeah, it's going really well in comparison to perhaps the tail end of last year. I'm definitely seeing less numbers through open for inspections. But that being said, the buyers coming through the properties are qualified and ready to transact. So whilst we are having lesser numbers and slightly more days on market, I'm not seeing a price adjustment across the marketplace. Naturally, there is external influences that can obviously affect each particular property, but I'm not seeing a huge fluctuation in price. The only thing I am seeing is average days on market gently getting longer as we get closer to this potential election.
Okay, and I should ask you about those first-time home buyers and how difficult they're finding it at the moment in Canberra.
Yeah, first home buyers are quite a big portion of our marketplace, particularly at the moment. I am finding that first home buyers definitely have options. So our stock numbers are sitting slightly higher than what they once were. For instance, on average, we usually put 250 odd properties on the market every week, whereas last week we put on over 400. So there is quite a bit of stock for buyers to pick from, particularly in that first home buyer bracket. So that being said, we are transacting a lot of property to first home buyers, but they do have a lot of choice.
We are your local source for unbiased, expert insights into the world of real estate. We are not a real estate company. Our only objective is to help you better understand the real estate market.
Angelo, it brings me back to this whole thought process about King's Cross and the transformation, particularly over the last 20 years, because it's been rather significant for the real estate industry.
Yeah, it has been huge. I mean, I started just after 2000, being a kid going out and clubbing like all, many others in those early 2000s period. But I mean, prior to my time, it's had many different lives. But, it was over 10 years ago now when we had that, one hit punch that really changed the area. And there was a couple of developers that, backed themselves and were the first ones to say, well, look, these properties can start to get some significant values. And now all the clubs are gyms and, you've got the old video easies turned into, 1-2 chef hat restaurants. We've got just not what it used to be. The alleyways where I used to be, getting cash for rent in the back streets and finding syringes in poles are now coffee shops and, billionaires sitting next to, young entrepreneurs, let alone everybody just all mixed in there together, which has really made what it is today and still quite a diverse marketplace. So it's got another 10 years ahead of it, which is going to see another big change with some significant developments coming in and, $30 million and $20 million being the new norm for some of these downsizers. And there's about 30 or 40 more of those to come. So it's not what it used to be. We've still got a few clubs. We've still got, believe it or not, one of the streets, Kellett Street, we've got a strip club on one side, a brothel on the other, and then we're selling a one bedroom in the middle for $2.5 million. So no one's too fussed about those anymore. And they love the fact that that's what makes the area what it is.
That is very, very diverse, and you just took me back as soon as you said those two words, video easy, hey?
Yeah, I know. Well, it was video easy. It was, it used to be that steak place. Can't remember what it used to be called. But we've got a few, establishments that have continued on for the last 20 years. But now we've got new staples in the area which have really taken over. And nowadays it's, want to have a cocktail or somewhere to eat. It's, walk up and down Mackay Street and, take your pick.
And what is happening at the moment in terms of your market? Is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market?
Good question. Look, we've got markets within markets. We've got some that are performing really well, sort of 2 bedrooms in that early ones. Hot property now, they're flying out the door. 1 bedrooms at 900,000 are flying out the door, but then 2 bedrooms at 2 million. There's just not enough buyers in that market, in that price point right now. So overall, I'd say we're a pretty fairly balanced market, but our upper end, 10 mil plus is definitely still seeing a lot of emotion. And, if it ticks the right boxes, we're seeing things between 10 and 20 million, not lasting very long and not even making it to market.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.